Imagine yourself on a paradisiacal beach, with the sun setting on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The waves gently kiss the golden sand, and a gentle breeze caresses her face. Now close your eyes and think. What if this natural beauty was just a glimpse of something much bigger, much more wonderful? What if there was a love so deep, so immense, that it could completely transform your life? This is the story of Mary, a young woman whose journey of discovery led her to find a truly wonderful Savior. Get ready for an adventure that will touch your heart, and who knows, change your perspective on love and life. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and cornbread baking in the oven permeated the air of the small wooden house on the fringes of a country town. Maria, at the age of 5, sitting at the kitchen table, swayed her legs that barely touched the floor. Her brown eyes, large and curious, followed every movement of Donna Cecilia, her grandmother, who moved with methodical efficiency through the kitchen. "Sit up straight, girl," Donna Cecilia's rough voice cut through the silence. "And stop messing with that towel." Maria immediately straightened her posture, her small hands moving away from the embroidery of the tablecloth she had been absent-mindedly caressing. The fabric, once white, now had a yellowish hue from time, but the embroidered flowers still retained their delicate beauty. It was one of the few beautiful things in her grandmother's austere home. The girl watched as Donna Cecilia placed the cup of black coffee on the table, the dark liquid reflecting the wrinkled and stern face of the lady. Next to it, a plate with a generous slice of cornbread, still steaming. The aroma was tempting, but Maria knew better than to take it without permission. "You can eat," said Donna Cecilia, noticing her granddaughter's hungry look. "But slowly. I don't want to see you choking like last time." Maria nodded, carefully picking up the bread. Each bite was savored slowly, not just for the taste, but because it was one of the rare moments when she felt something close to her grandmother's affection. Coffee, she knew, was not for her. Coffee was an adult thing, Donna Cecilia always said. As she ate, Mary's eyes wandered over the kitchen, stopping at the various saints and crucifixes that adorned the walls. St. George on his white horse, Our Lady of Aparecida with her blue cloak, and the large, dark wooden crucifix that dominated the main wall. The painted eyes of the saints seemed to follow her, judging her every move. Finished? Donna Cecilia's voice brought her back to reality. Then go get ready for Mass. I don't want to be late because of you. Maria slid out of her chair, her tiny hands wiping invisible crumbs from her simple dress. Before leaving the kitchen, she hesitated, glancing at her grandmother with an unformulated question on her lips. "What's wrong, girl?" Donna Cecilia asked, a touch of impatience in her voice. "Grandma," Maria began, her voice almost a whisper, "do you think Mom and Dad are coming back today?" Donna Cecilia's face hardened, a shadow passing through her eyes. "Maria, we've already talked about it. Your parents have their own problems to solve. Now go get ready and don't make me repeat myself." Maria nodded, swallowing the lump that formed in her throat. She walked out of the kitchen, her footsteps echoing through the silent house. In the small room she shared with her grandmother, Maria sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her eyes fixed on the only photo she had of her parents. The photograph, yellowed and with the edges folded, showed a young and smiling couple. The man, tall and dark-haired, had an arm around a woman with brown hair and eyes identical to Maria's. They seemed happy, so different from the hazy memory Maria had of them. With a sigh, the girl put the photo back in the drawer of the bedside table. She knelt by the bedside, joining her hands in prayer as Donna Cecilia had taught. "Dear God," she whispered, "please get Mom and Dad back soon. And if you can, make Grandma smile more. Amen." Getting up, Maria began to get ready for Mass. As she combed her hair and adjusted her Sunday dress, she couldn't help but feel that something was missing from her life. A void that neither the saints on the walls nor the whispered prayers seemed to fill. Outside, the church bell began to ring, its melancholy sound echoing through the small town. For Maria, it was yet another reminder of the rigid and austere world in which she lived. A world where love always seemed conditional, always out of reach. But deep in his heart, a small flame of hope still burned. Hope that one day she would find the unconditional love she longed for, that would fill the void she didn't even know how to name. Little did she know that her journey in search of this love was just beginning. The creak of the window echoed in the quiet room as Maria, now 15, deftly slid out of the house. The night was warm, typical of the countryside summer, and the air carried the sweet scent of the ladies of the night who grew in the backyard. With her heart racing, she adjusted her backpack on her back and cast one last glance at the dark house where her grandmother slept. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she muttered to herself, a mixture of guilt and excitement bubbling up in her chest. Maria ran through the narrow, familiar streets of her town, the shadows of the trees dancing under the dim light of the streetlights. Her footsteps led her away from the center, toward the old abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. It was there that her friends waited for her, away from the disapproving looks of adults and the suffocating walls of unmet expectations. As he approached the factory, the low sound of music escaped through the broken windows. Maria felt her body relax, as if she could finally breathe after holding her breath for a long time. She entered, her eyes adjusting to the dim light lit only by a few flashlights and the flickering light of a small fire controlled in a metal drum. "Maria!" The voice of Julia, her best friend, cut the air. "I thought I wasn't coming anymore." Maria smiled, letting herself be embraced by Julia. The smell of cigarettes and something stronger, which she suspected was the beer that the older boys always brought, hung in the air. "The old woman took a long time to sleep today," Maria explained, letting her backpack fall to the concrete floor. "But I managed to escape." Julia laughed, pulling Maria closer to the group. It was an eclectic mix of teenagers, some from school, others who had dropped out of school, all united by the same sense of belonging that Maria knew so well. "Hey, Maria," called Pedro, a 17-year-old boy with a worn guitar on his lap. "Did you bring that new lyric you said?" Maria nodded, feeling a wave of nervousness and excitement. She took a crumpled notebook from her backpack, the pages full of scribbles, half-formed verses and abstract drawings. He leafed through until he found the right page and handed it to Pedro. "Wow," he muttered, eyes running over the words. "This is intense." Maria felt her face heat up. Her lyrics were always like that, raw, emotional, full of a pain she barely understood. They spoke of abandonment, of searching, of a void that seemed impossible to fill. Pedro began to strum the guitar, finding a melody that fit Maria's words. Gradually, her voice joined the music, giving life to the words that Maria had poured on paper. "In a world of plaster saints, I seek a love that is not a verse. To everything I am, to everything I feel, in this labyrinth, I get lost and lie." Maria's voice, hesitant at first, gained strength. It was as if each word sung was a small liberation, a way to purge all the repressed feelings she carried. The surrounding group listened in silence, hypnotized. When the song ended, there was a moment of stillness before everyone erupted in applause and shouts of approval. "Damn, Maria!" exclaimed Julia, her eyes shining. "That was amazing!" Maria smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and vulnerability. It was the first time he shared his music with anyone other than Julia, and the feeling was intoxicating. The evening continued with more music, laughter, and whispered conversations. Maria allowed herself to relax, truly feeling herself for the first time in a long time. Here, among these unlikely friends, she didn't have to be the obedient granddaughter, the exemplary student, the quiet girl everyone expected her to be. But as the night wore on, a familiar restlessness began to settle in his chest. It was as if, even in this moment of apparent freedom, something was still missing. While her friends laughed and danced to another song, Maria moved away a little, leaning against a cold wall. His eyes wandered to one of the broken windows, where he could see a piece of starry sky. "There has to be something more," she muttered to herself, the words almost lost in the surrounding noise. It was at that moment that she heard it, distant, almost imperceptible, the sound of a church bell. Maria frowned, confused. It was not Sunday, and it was certainly not the time for masses. Curious, she approached the window, stretching to get a better look. Far away, in the center of town, she could see a small church she had never noticed before. The lights were on, and soft music seemed to float in the night air. For a brief moment, Mary felt a strange attraction, as if something was calling to her. But then Julia shouted her name, calling her back to the party, and the moment passed. Maria returned to her friends, diving back into music and teenage rebellion. But a small part of her stood in that window, looking up at the distant church, wondering what could be going on there that seemed so different. As the night wore on and the party continued, Maria couldn't help but feel like she was on the verge of something big, something that would change her life forever. She just didn't know what yet. The bus rattled along the dusty road, leaving behind the small town Maria had called home for 18 years. Sitting by the window, the young woman watched the landscape gradually change, the familiar fields giving way to unfamiliar scenery. Her backpack, worn out and full of ill-articulated dreams, rested on the bench next to her as a silent reminder of all that she was leaving behind. Maria closed her eyes, letting the memory of her grandmother's farewell dawn on her mind. Donna Cecilia's wrinkled face, normally so stern, had softened with a mixture of worry and reluctant pride. "Are you sure about that, girl?" Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "The big city is no place for a girl alone." Maria had nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I have to go, Grandma. I need to find my place in the world." Now, hours after that conversation, Maria's determination was mixed with a fear she dared not admit even to herself. The big city, with its bright lights and promises of opportunity, awaited her. But what exactly was she looking for? The bus finally reached its destination as the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. Maria climbed down, her legs wobbly after the long drive, and was immediately engulfed by the hubbub of the bus station. The smell of diesel, fast food, and a myriad of different perfumes hit her like a wave, making her feel momentarily dizzy. With hesitant steps, she ventured out of the bus station, stopping on the sidewalk to soak up the view of the city that stretched out before her. Tall buildings touched the sky, cars honked incessantly, and a crowd of people hurried past, each lost in his own world. "What now?" Maria muttered to herself, feeling small and insignificant in the face of the urban immensity. The first few days in the city were a dizzying mix of excitement and fear. Maria rented a tiny room in a noisy boarding house, sharing a bathroom with 5 other tenants. Nights were punctuated by the sound of distant sirens and muffled conversations through the thin walls. Determined to support herself, Maria got a job as a waitress at a 24-hour diner. The work was exhausting, the clients often rude, but there was a strange freedom in making your own money, in making your own decisions. It was during one of her night shifts that Maria met Lucio, a bar musician with dreamy eyes and sweet promises. He invited her to see him play, and Maria, hungry for connection and excitement, readily accepted. The bar was dark and smoky, so different from the environments she knew. Lucio's music enveloped her like a warm blanket, making her feel alive in a way she hadn't experienced since her rebellious nights in the old abandoned factory. "You have an amazing voice," Lucio told her after the show, his eyes shining with wonder and something else Maria couldn't identify. "He should sing with me someday." And so began a new phase in Maria's life. Nights at the diner gave way to performances in small bars and underground clubs. Her voice, raw and exciting, began to attract attention. The lyrics she wrote, filled with a pain and longing she barely understood, resonated with a growing audience. But as his popularity grew, so did an uneasiness in his heart. The evenings became a confusing mix of applause, drinking, and a desperate search for something she couldn't name. Each relationship, each new experience, seemed to promise to fill that void within her, only to leave her even emptier in the end. One evening, after a particularly acclaimed performance, Maria found herself alone in her small apartment, which she could now afford thanks to her growing success. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty bottles and half-written song lyrics, she looked at herself in the mirror cracked on the wall. The reflection that stared back at her was that of a young woman with tired eyes and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Success, fame, love. She had tasted it all, but she still felt as lost as the day she arrived in town. "What am I doing?" she whispered to her reflection, feeling warm tears stream down her cheeks. It was in this moment of vulnerability that Maria listened. Faint, almost imperceptible through the open window, the sound of a church bell. The sound transported her back to that night in her hometown, when she had glimpsed a small church lit up in the distance. Moved by an impulse she couldn't explain, Maria got up, wiped her face, and went out into the night. Her feet carried her through the streets of the city, following the sound of the bell as if it were a beacon in the darkness. When she finally reached the source of the sound, Maria found herself in front of a small church, almost hidden among the tall buildings. The doors were open, and a soft light emanated from within. Hesitantly, Maria took a step inside. The interior was simple but cozy. Some people were scattered in the pews, some praying silently, others just sitting in contemplation. Maria sat in the last pew, feeling strangely at home in this unfamiliar place. For the first time in years, she felt a peace that she couldn't explain settle over her. "Welcome!" A gentle voice surprised her. Maria looked up and saw a middle-aged man with a warm smile. "I am João, the pastor here. First time in our church?" Maria nodded, unable to find words. "Well," John continued, his smile widening, "know that you are welcome here whenever you need a place to rest your soul." As John walked away to greet other visitors, Mary felt something change within her. It was as if, after years of searching, she had finally found the first step on a path that could lead her to what her heart longed for. There, in that small church in the heart of the big city, Mary began to glimpse the possibility of a love unlike anything she had ever experienced. A love that could fill the void that neither fame, nor relationships, nor experiences had been able to touch. Her journey of searching was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Mary felt a spark of genuine hope ignite in her heart. The rain fell in torrents, turning the city streets into urban rivers. Maria ran, her footsteps echoing on the wet sidewalks, as she tried to protect herself under a soggy newspaper. Her hair, once neatly arranged for that night's show, now stuck to her face in dark, heavy locks. The flashing neon of the Bar Melodia Notturna was left behind, as well as the applause and admiring looks. Another night, another presentation. But this time, something was different. The words of his own songs felt hollow, echoing in his ears like unfulfilled promises. "What a damn rain!" Maria cursed softly, feeling the cold water run down her blouse. It was then that she saw, like a beacon in the storm, the warm lights of a small coffee shop. "João's Café," said the simple sign above the door. Without a second thought, Maria ran to the promised shelter. The bell above the door clinked softly as she entered, announcing her arrival. The warmth of the room enveloped her immediately, bringing with it the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon. Maria took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension of the night dissipate. "Good evening, my young lady," a gentle voice greeted her. "Looks like you got a nice rain, huh?" Maria turned to the source of the voice and was faced with a middle-aged man with gray hair and a warm smile. He was behind the counter, drying a cup with a tea towel. "Yes, I got it," Maria replied, a shy smile forming on her lips. "Can I grab a coffee to go, please?" The man looked out the window where the rain continued to fall mercilessly. "To go? With this time? Why don't you sit down for a while and wait for the rain to pass?" Maria hesitated. She was not used to selfless kindness, especially in the big city, but something in the man's gaze, a mixture of wisdom and compassion, made her accept the invitation. "All right," she said, making her way to one of the tables by the window. The man approached a few minutes later, bringing not only a steaming cup of coffee, but also a generous piece of cinnamon cake. "I didn't ask for cake," Maria commented, surprised. "Courtesy of the house," the man replied with a smile. "I'm Joan, by the way, owner of this little refuge." "Maria," she introduced herself, picking up the cup gratefully. The heat of the coffee warmed his cold hands. John sat in the opposite chair, his gentle eyes studying Mary curiously. "So, Maria, what brings you out on a night like this?" Maria took a sip of her coffee, letting the hot liquid warm her insides. "Work," she replied simply. "I'm a singer." "Ah, an artist," John exclaimed, his eyes shining with genuine interest. "It should be exciting to share your art with the world." Maria shrugged, playing with her fork on the cake plate. "Sometimes, other times, I don't know. It's like something's missing, you know?" The words slipped away before she could contain them. Maria bit her lip, surprised at her own honesty before this stranger. John nodded slowly, as if he understood perfectly. "You know, Maria, a lot of people spend their whole lives feeling like something is missing, seeking to fill a void that seems impossible to fill." Maria looked up, meeting John's gaze. There was something in his words that resonated deep within her. "And how does one fill that void?" she asked, her voice little more than a whisper. John smiled, a smile that seemed to light up his entire face. "Oh, that's the big question, isn't it? You know, Mary, I believe that there is a love so great, so immense, that it could fill all the oceans and still overflow. A love that knows us completely and accepts us exactly as we are." Maria felt something stir inside her. It was as if John's words were touching a long-forgotten chord in his heart. "That looks like too beautiful to be true," she murmured, more to herself than to John. "But it's true," John replied softly, "and it is within the reach of all of us. We just have to be willing to open our hearts to receive him." A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the sound of rain outside and the occasional clinking of cups. Mary found herself reflecting on John's words, feeling as if she were on the verge of a great discovery. "You know," John spoke again, his voice gentle, "there's a little church not far from here. We have meetings every Wednesday night. If you're interested in exploring more about this love, you'd be welcome to join us." Maria hesitated. Church was not exactly his usual environment, but something about the way John spoke, the peace that seemed to emanate from him, intrigued her deeply. I'll think about it," she replied, surprising herself at the sincerity in her own voice. Joan nodded without pressing. At that moment, the doorbell tinkled again, announcing the arrival of another customer. John stood up, offering Maria one last warm smile before walking away. Maria sat there for a while longer, enjoying the coffee and cake, letting the warmth and comfort of the moment envelop her. When he finally got up to leave, the rain outside had turned into a gentle drizzle. Before leaving, she turned to John, who was back behind the counter. "Thank you," she said, putting her whole heart into that simple word. John just smiled and nodded, as if he understood everything she couldn't express. As she walked back home, Maria felt as if something had changed inside her. The city lights seemed brighter, the air fresher, and in his heart, a small flame of hope had been lit. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, Maria felt she was on the threshold of something extraordinary. The unexpected encounter with John had not only been a refuge from the rain, but possibly the first step toward filling that void that had tormented her for so long. With a smile on her lips, Maria lifted her face to the soft drizzle, letting the drops of water wash away the last shadows of doubt from her face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but now she had a new perspective to face them. The afternoon sun filtered through the thin curtains of Maria's small apartment, creating dancing patterns on the worn wooden floor. Sitting on the faded sofa, the young singer absent-mindedly twirled a booklet between her fingers. "Church of Abundant Grace, meeting on Wednesdays, 7 p.m., the paper read in simple letters. Maria sighed deeply, her gaze wandering around the apartment. Posters of past concerts decorated the walls, silent reminders of a career that, until a few days ago, seemed to be everything she ever wanted. Now, each image seemed to scream the same question. Is that all? The meeting with João in the cafeteria had triggered something inside her, as if a long-closed floodgate had been opened, releasing a torrent of long-suppressed questions and anxieties. "What am I doing?" Maria muttered to herself, running her fingers through her hair in a gesture of frustration. She stood up, walking to the window. Outside, the city pulsated with its usual energy. People in a hurry, cars honking, the chaotic symphony of urban life. For so long, Maria had felt part of this frenetic pace, searching in the lights of the city and the applause of the crowds for something to fill the void in her chest. But now, Mary closed her eyes, letting John's words echo in her mind. There is a love so great, so immense, that it could fill all the oceans and yet overflow. A part of her, the cynical part, shaped by years of disappointments and unfulfilled promises, wanted to laugh at those words. Unconditional love, in a world where everything seemed to have a price, where even the most enthusiastic applause dissipated as soon as the lights went out. And yet, Maria opened her eyes, her gaze falling on an old framed photo on the bedside table. In it, a younger version of herself smiled next to her grandmother. Donna Cecilia's eyes, normally so severe, seemed softened in that image, frozen in time. "What would you say now, Grandma?" Maria whispered to the photo. "You've always talked about God, but he's always seemed so distant." With a sigh, Maria pulled out her cell phone. His fingers hovered over the message icon, indecision weighing on his heart. Finally, she typed a quick message to her friend and musical partner, Julia. "Hey, Ju, I won't be able to rehearse tonight. Have a compromise." The answer came almost instantly. "How are you, babe? You've been a little weird lately. Any problem?" Maria bit her lip, considering how to respond. How to explain something that even she didn't fully understand. "I'm fine," she finally replied. "Just thinking about a few things. I'll tell you later, okay?" Putting her cell phone aside, Maria walked to the small bathroom. Looking at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman who stared back at her. Her eyes, normally made up for concerts, were bare, revealing a vulnerability she rarely allowed others to see. "What are you looking for, Mary?" she asked her reflection. The hours passed slowly, each minute laden with the weight of the decision Maria knew she had to make. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, she finally stood up. With trembling hands, Maria chose simple clothes, jeans and a white blouse, so different from the flashy costumes she wore on stage. She hesitated for a moment before removing her makeup, feeling strangely exposed. The drive to the church was a journey in itself. Each step seemed to take her further away from everything she knew, from everything she had built for herself in recent years. And yet, there was a strange feeling of return, as if somehow she was walking towards something that had always been waiting for her. When Maria finally arrived at the small church, her hands were sweaty and her heart was beating so hard that she was sure everyone could hear it. For a moment, she stood on the sidewalk, watching people come in. Families, old people, young people, they all seemed so normal, and yet there was something on their faces, a peace that Mary secretly envied. "You came." The gentle voice startled her. Maria turned to see João, the man from the coffee shop, smiling warmly at her. Yes," Maria stammered, feeling suddenly shy. "I'm not sure why, but I'm here." John nodded understandingly. "Sometimes the first step is the hardest, but you've already given it. Come, let me introduce you to some friends." As John led her into the church, Mary felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. She didn't know what to expect. She didn't know if she would find the answers she was looking for. But for the first time in a long time, she felt she was on the right track. The interior of the church was simple but welcoming. People talked in low voices, creating a soft murmur that seemed to envelop Maria like a gentle embrace. When the music began, soft and melodious, she felt something stir inside her. Sitting on the last bench, Maria closed her eyes and let the music envelop her. And there, amidst strangers who somehow didn't seem so strange after all, she finally allowed the tears she had held back for so long to flow freely. "God," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "if you're really there, if this love of which John spoke is real, please show me. I'm tired of feeling empty, tired of running. I want to meet you." In that moment, as soft music filled the air and the words of a long-forgotten prayer resurfaced in her mind, Maria felt something change within her. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. There were no heavenly lights or angelic voices. It was more like a gentle whisper, a silent promise that she was no longer alone. Maria's internal struggle was far from over. Doubts, fears, and old habits don't disappear overnight. But that night, in a small church in the heart of the big city, she took the first step on a journey that promised to change everything. And for the first time in years, Mary felt a peace that she could not explain, but that filled every corner of her being. It was the beginning of something new, the awakening of a long-dormant soul. Dawn painted the sky with soft shades of pink and gold when Maria opened her eyes. For a moment, she lay on her bed, watching as the rising sunlight danced on the ceiling of her small apartment. Something was different. It wasn't an external change. The room was the same as it had always been, with its concert posters and scattered clothes, but something inside it had transformed. The previous night in church seemed almost like a dream, but the sense of peace that had enveloped her remained, as real and tangible as the air she breathed. Maria sat up on the bed, running her fingers through her unkempt hair, a soft smile playing on her lips. "It's real," she whispered to herself, as if saying the words out loud might confirm the reality of the experience. With an energy she hadn't felt in years, Maria got up and walked to the window. Outside, the city was beginning to wake up. The distant sound of cars and the murmur of the first people on the streets created a familiar urban symphony. But today, instead of feeling overwhelmed by the chaos of the city, Maria felt strangely connected to everything. Their eyes scanned the horizon until they found the small tower of the Church of Abundant Grace, almost hidden among the tallest buildings. A warmth spread in his chest as he remembered Pastor John's words, the soft music, the whispered prayers. "God," Maria spoke softly, testing the name on her lips as if it were a new word in a foreign language. "You're really there, aren't you?" As if in response, a ray of sunlight burst through the clouds, illuminating his face. Maria closed her eyes, letting the warmth penetrate her skin. It was as if, for the first time, she could feel the gentle touch of someone greater than herself. With a deep sigh, Maria stepped away from the window and began her morning routine. But today, every action seemed loaded with a new meaning. As she sipped her coffee, she found herself silently thanking for the hot drink, for the roof over her head, for the air in her lungs. Picking up her notebook of compositions, Maria sat on the worn sofa. His hands caressed the pages full of scribbles and half-formed letters. So many songs about pain, loneliness, searching, and now she felt like she had found something that changed everything. Inspired, Maria began to write. The words flowed in a way she had never experienced before. It wasn't a song about pain or loss, but about hope, about a love so great it could fill oceans. In the depths of my being, a gentle whisper, I heard love greater than I can understand. In your arms, I surrender. Maria hummed the melody softly, surprised by the emotion in her own voice. It was as if each note carried a piece of his newly awakened soul. The sound of her cell phone brought her back to reality. It was a message from Julia. "Hey, Star, ready for tonight's rehearsal? We have to be sharp for Saturday's show." Maria bit her lip, feeling a pang of guilt. With everything that was going on internally, she had completely forgotten about the band's commitments. After a moment's hesitation, she replied, "Ju, I need to talk to you. Can we meet earlier? There's something important I want to share." The answer came almost immediately, loaded with concern. "Of course, Em. Is everything okay? Do you want me to go there now?" Maria smiled, grateful for Julia's friendship. "That's okay. Yes, In fact, better than good. I'll explain it to you when we meet. Putting her cell phone aside, Maria turned her attention to the notebook in her lap. The words he had written seemed to shine on the page, as if they were illuminated by an inner light. With a deep sigh, she closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done since she was a child. She prayed. It was not an elaborate prayer or one full of fine words. It was simple, honest, coming from the bottom of her heart. "God," she began, her voice little more than a whisper, "I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't know if I understand all this, but thanks. Thank you for this love that I'm starting to feel. Please help me to understand better, to grow in this faith, and if possible, help me share this with others, especially with Julia. Amen." When she opened her eyes, Mary felt a peace that was beyond understanding. It was as if a weight she didn't even know she was carrying had been lifted off her shoulders. Standing up, she walked to the mirror. The woman who stared back at her looked different. The same eyes, the same face, but there was a light, a hope that wasn't there before. "It's a new beginning," Maria said to her reflection, a genuine smile lighting up her face. As she prepared to meet Julia, Maria knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There was a lot to learn, a lot to discover. Your newly awakened faith would be tested, challenged, but for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone on this journey. With a light heart and a song of hope on her lips, Maria stepped out to face the day, eager to share with her best friend the transformation that was happening in her life. What she didn't know was that her awakening to faith was just the beginning. Greater challenges and deeper discoveries awaited on the horizon, ready to test and strengthen this new light that had been lit in your soul. As Maria walked through the bustling streets of the city, her heart filled with newfound hope and purpose. She had no idea that her past was about to resurface in an unexpected and potentially devastating way. On the opposite corner, partially hidden by the crowd, a familiar figure watched. Maria, with a mixture of surprise and determination. It was someone from her past, someone she thought she had left behind long ago. Who could this mysterious figure be? And how will her sudden appearance affect Mary's newly begun journey of faith? Will your love for the wonderful Savior be strong enough to face the ghosts of your past? Don't miss the next video in our series where we'll dive even deeper into Mary's transformative journey. We will discover how she faces this unexpected challenge and how the power of love and forgiveness can change even the most difficult situations. If you want to know what happens next in this exciting story of faith, redemption, and personal discovery, click on the link that is appearing on the screen now. Get ready for a narrative that will touch your heart and may even inspire change in your own life. The continuation of Mary's extraordinary journey awaits you in the next video.